The world back then didn't have a name. It was just the world. And it was big. So big that even from the highest branch of the tallest fig tree, you couldn't see the end of the forest. The sun, a big, warm, orange thing, was just peeking over the hills, pushing the shadows back into the gullies and under the thick canopy. It made the air feel sticky and new, like the first breath after you'd been holding it too long. My name is Kale. Not that anyone really called me that. Most of the time, I was just Little One, or a grunt from my mother, Alara, to tell me to get down from something I shouldn't be climbing. But in my head, I was Kyle. I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, if anyone had bothered to count. My days were a mix of chasing, buzzing, jewel-colored beetles, trying to catch lizards that were faster than lightning, and learning the serious business of survival. Right now, the serious business was finding breakfast. The family was stirring. My father, a giant of a male named Orion, was already down on the forest floor, his powerful shoulders hunched as he foraged for fallen fruit. His dark, thick fur was a deep brown, almost black in the shadows, and his face had a serious, thoughtful look. He was strong, everyone knew that. But he was also smart. He knew which trees gave the sweetest fruit and which caves were safe from the big cats. My mother, Ilara, was still in the tree with me and my little sister, Lyra. Lyra was just a baby, her little fists curled into my mother's fur as she slept. Ilara was a protector. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, were always scanning, always listening. She taught me which berries would make your belly hurt, and which ones were a sweet treat. She showed me how to crack open a tough nut with a smooth rock. Her hands were gentle but strong, her grip on a branch sure and steady. We lived in a place that was a mix of everything. It wasn't a super thick jungle like you see in some places, but it wasn't an open field either. It was a mosaic. There were patches of dense forest where the light barely touched the ground, and then there were sun-drenched clearings with tall grasses that waved in the breeze like an ocean. A river, the lifeblood of our world, snaked through it all, its water cool and clear. Our kind, the ones my father led, weren't like the little monkeys that chattered in the trees. We were bigger. Our arms were long and powerful, perfect for swinging from branch to branch. But we also spent a lot of time on the ground, my father especially. He'd walk on all fours, sure, but sometimes, when he was just moving from one patch of food to another, he'd stand up on his 2 legs. It looked natural, not like a trick. He'd stand there, looking out over the tall grass, a hand shading his eyes. He said it let him see farther, to spot a distant food source, or, more importantly, a distant danger. I tried to copy him sometimes. It was harder than it looked. My balance was wobbly and my arms felt weird hanging by my sides. But the feeling was different. From up high, you could see a different world. You weren't just looking at the roots and the leaves on the ground. You were looking at the horizon, at the rolling hills, and the sky that went on forever. The morning went on. We moved as a family unit, a little tribe of about a dozen. There was another adult female, a friend of my mother's named Serafina, and her 2 young ones. The older males, the younger ones without families, kept a respectful distance from Orion. But they moved with us, always keeping an eye out. There was safety in numbers, a lesson you learned early and never forgot. We found a patch of wild plums, their skin a deep purple. They were soft and sweet, and we gorged ourselves, the juice running down our chins. Lyra made happy little noises as my mother mashed some for her. Orion kept watch from a nearby rock, his chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. He was the anchor of our world. That day felt like every other day. The sun climbed higher, the air grew hotter and heavier. The sounds of the forest changed from the chirping of early birds to the droning buzz of insects. But there was a difference, a feeling I couldn't put my finger on. It was a subtle tension, a whisper on the wind. Later, as the sun began its long, slow fall toward the horizon, we heard it. A rustle in the tall grass, but it wasn't the sound of a deer. It was too heavy, too deliberate. The sound of something big, something with a purpose. Orion's head snapped up. His face, usually so calm, was suddenly tight. His eyes narrowed. He let out a low, rumbling call, a sound that wasn't a warning, not yet. It was a question. My mother pulled me and Lyra close. I could feel the tension in her muscles, the way her grip on my shoulder tightened. The world had a name, after all. It was called survival. And sometimes you had to fight for it. I didn't know it then, but this feeling, this subtle change in the air, was the beginning of a different kind of story. The story of a new challenge, a new world, and a new way to live. The world was about to get a lot smaller, and we were about to get a lot smarter. The rustling in the tall grass grew louder, and the low, questioning rumble from my father, Orion, went unanswered. The air, which had been warm and still just moments before, now felt heavy and thick with a different kind of silence. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a resting world, but the taut, watchful silence of something holding its breath. My mother, Elara, didn't just pull us closer. She wrapped her long, powerful arm around me, her hand a firm, grounding weight on my shoulder. Little Lyra, no longer sleeping, whimpered softly, her tiny face pressed against our mother's chest. My father's head swiveled from side to side, his gaze sharp and focused. He was no longer just a father looking for breakfast. He was the leader, the guardian. The other adults in our group, a few more females with their own young, and a couple of younger males, were all still, their movements frozen. Their eyes, like ours, were fixed on the patch of rustling grass. We knew the sounds of the forest, the gentle swish of a deer's leg, the heavy thud of a rhino's foot, the quick scamper of a bush pig. This was none of those. This was something else. It was too low to be a big cat, too steady and purposeful. A leopard would stalk, its movements fluid and silent. A saber-toothed cat, a terror we knew mostly from the stories told around our resting places, would be even more deliberate, a ghost of fur and muscle. This sound was just coming. It was a slow, relentless pushing through the grass. Then a shape emerged. It wasn't a predator, not in the way we knew them. It was another one of us, but it wasn't from our group. This one was older, a male whose fur was a dusty gray, his shoulders slumped. He was alone. A solitary male was a rare and dangerous sight. It meant he had been cast out of his group or his group was gone. An ape without a family was an ape without a future, and often without sanity. This male, however, was just tired. He walked with a limp, and a long, jagged scar ran down his face, a white line against his dark skin. He didn't look at us. His eyes were fixed on the river, on the promise of water. He was thirsty, and he was too weary to care that a rival group might be in his way. Orion, my father, watched him, his posture still tense, but the questioning rumble in his chest faded into a thoughtful silence. The old male reached the river's edge, dipped his face in the cool water, and drank. The sound of his lapping was the only thing to break the quiet. We watched him. He wasn't a threat. Not to us, anyway. He was just a ghost from a different life, a reminder of what could happen if you were unlucky or not strong enough. After a long drink, he turned, his weary eyes finally meeting Orion's across the clearing. There was no challenge in his gaze, no aggression, just an understanding. Two leaders, one with a family and the other with nothing. The old male nodded his head slowly, a gesture I'd never seen before, and then he turned and vanished back into the tall grass, the same slow, purposeful rustle marking his departure. My father didn't relax immediately. He watched the spot where the old male had disappeared for a long time, his mind working. The encounter was a lesson. It showed us that the world was changing. The old ways of life, just following the food and avoiding the predators, were maybe Not enough. The old male was a warning. He was a symbol of something bigger, something we were all starting to feel. The sun continued to set, painting the sky in colors I couldn't even name. Blood red, fiery orange, soft purple. It was beautiful, but the beauty felt a little different now. It had a sharp edge to it, a sense of something about to happen. My mother finally loosened her grip, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The rest of the evening was a mix of the familiar and the strange. We ate more fruit and a few juicy grubs my mother found under a log. The air cooled, and the sounds of the night creatures began to wake up. We settled into the high branches of a massive baobab tree, a favorite resting spot. Its trunk was so wide that 10 of us couldn't have put our arms all the way around it. That night, as I lay snuggled against my mother, I couldn't sleep. The image of the old, weary male kept replaying in my mind. Why was he alone? What had happened to his family? The wind, which had been silent during the day, now whispered through the leaves, carrying with it a new kind of message. It wasn't just the rustle of animals or the song of insects. It felt like it was telling us something. The world wasn't as endless as I had thought. The safe places were getting smaller. The familiar was being pushed aside by the unknown. I had heard the elders speak of it in low tones, about the river changing its path, about the seasons feeling different, about the food. The morning light, a soft, hazy gold, felt different than it did the day before. The encounter with the old solitary male had left a quiet anxiety hanging in the air, a feeling that was as real as the dew on the leaves. My father, Orion, was the first to descend from our baobab tree, his movements deliberate and quiet. He didn't make the usual loud thud as his feet hit the ground. Instead, he dropped to the earth with a silent grace, his head turning, his nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air. The other adults followed, their faces a little more serious than usual. My mother, Ilara, held Lyra close as she climbed down, her eyes never leaving the forest floor. It was a new kind of watchfulness. Before, she was scanning for a leopard or a python. Now it felt like she was watching for something less tangible, something that might be a threat to our way of life itself. The young males in the group, usually boisterous and full of energy, were also subdued, sticking closer to the main group. The world felt smaller, more dangerous, and a little bit sadder. We moved quietly through the forest, a silent procession of shadows. The usual morning chorus of bird calls and insect buzzes seemed muted. It was as if the forest was holding its breath with us. Orion led us to a patch of wild dates, their sweet, sticky goodness a welcome distraction from the tension. The family ate, but without the usual relaxed chatter. Everyone kept an eye on their surroundings, an ear tuned to every snap of a twig or rustle of a leaf. While the others ate, I found a smooth, flat rock. I liked to sit on it and watch the tiny, busy world of the forest floor. A line of ants marched past, each one carrying a little piece of leaf or a dead beetle. A brilliant blue dragonfly buzzed past me, its wings a blur of motion. I wondered if they felt the change in the air, too. Did the ants feel the ground shifting? Did the dragonfly feel the wind whispering a different story? My father finished eating and came to sit beside me on the rock. He was so big that I barely took up any room next to him. His fur was soft and smelled of earth and sunshine. He didn't say anything, just looked out at the tall grasses beyond the trees. I knew he was still thinking about the lone male. My father's mind was like the deepest part of the river, calm on the surface, but a powerful current underneath. He put a huge, gentle hand on my head and looked down at me. His eyes were dark and serious, but also full of a deep, warm love. He made a low, soft sound, a kind of humming that was just for me. It meant, pay attention. He then pointed with his chin towards the sun-drenched clearing. I followed his gaze. The tall grass, which had been so still a moment ago, was now swaying gently in a new way. It wasn't the wind. It was a rhythmic, almost graceful movement. And it wasn't from anything on the ground. High above, a shape glided from one tree to another. It was a new kind of ape, one I had never seen. It was smaller than us, its body sleek and agile. It moved with a speed that was breathtaking, almost like it was flying. We swung through the trees, sure, but this was different. This creature barely touched a branch before it was leaping to the next one. Its long, slender arms seemed to be made for the air. It was a shadow in the canopy, a fleeting glimpse of motion and grace. My father's hum changed, becoming a low, thoughtful rumble. He wasn't afraid of this new ape. He was curious. The creature was not a threat. It wasn't interested in us. It was interested in the higher branches, in a world we didn't fully inhabit. It was a perfect denizen of the treetops, a master of a domain we only visited. But my father's curiosity was tinged with a new kind of understanding. The old male had shown us what happened when you were alone. This new ape, this fleeting shadow, in the canopy showed us what happened when you specialized. It had found a different way to live, a way that was perfectly suited for a world that was changing. The mosaic of the forest, the mix of dense trees and open clearings was starting to shift. The trees were maybe not as close together as they once were. The open areas were getting bigger. I looked at my father's powerful legs, the ones that sometimes carried him on 2 feet. He was made for the ground as much as he was for the trees. We were a mix of both worlds. The shadow in the canopy was a creature of one world, and the lonely old male was a ghost of a different one. My father, in his silent contemplation, was a bridge between them. He was a creature of 2 worlds. He was learning to stand up straight to see over the grass, to use his hands to carry things, to think about the future in a way no other creature around us seemed to. The new ape disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, a fleeting glimpse of a different path. My father turned his gaze back to me. He made another soft hum, and then a gesture with his hand, a little push on my back. It was a signal to move on, but it was also a message. The world was changing, and we had to be ready. We had to be smart, and we had to be versatile. We had to be both a shadow in the canopy and a giant on the ground. The choice wasn't just about where to find the next meal anymore. It was about who we were going to become. The future, I realized, wasn't just a place we were heading. It was something we were building with every step we took. The days that followed were a blur of motion, a restless journey through a world that felt more and more unfamiliar. The encounter with the new swift ape in the treetops and the silent warning of the lone male had set something in motion. My father, Orion, was no longer content to simply follow the familiar paths. He was leading us on a longer, more deliberate trek, a migration of sorts. He seemed to have a destination in mind, though I had no idea what it was. The forest began to change. The tall, ancient trees that had been our home started to thin out. There were fewer of the giant figs and baobabs we relied on. The clearings between the trees grew wider, and the grass grew taller, a golden, endless sea that stretched to the horizon. The ground beneath our feet felt harder, drier. The air, once thick with the smell of rich earth and damp leaves, now carried the dusty scent of baked clay and dry scrub. This new world demanded a different way of moving. We couldn't just swing from tree to tree anymore. We had to cross the open spaces. My father was a master of this. He would drop to the ground, and instead of walking on all fours, he would stand up on his 2 strong legs. He'd look over the tall grass, his body a powerful silhouette against the sky, searching for a path, for a glimpse of danger, for the promise of a distant tree line. I tried to walk like him, wobbling on my 2 legs. It was a new and clumsy skill. It felt odd, but it also felt right. From up high, the world was different. I could see where the ground dipped and rose. I could see the path the wind made in the grass. It wasn't just about seeing farther. It was about seeing more. My hands, which had been clumsy for a while, now felt free. I could grab a stick to prod the ground or pick up a stone to crack open a tough nut without having to drop to all fours. First, my mother, Alara, also began to walk on two legs more often, especially when carrying my little sister, Lyra. It was a safer way to carry her across the open ground. She could hold Lyra close while her arms were free to balance or push away a low branch. It was a new kind of strength, a new kind of grace. But this new landscape was not without its dangers. The tall grass, which offered us a vantage point, also gave predators a place to hide. One day, as we were crossing a vast, open space, a low hiss and the rustle of a giant, slithering body made us all freeze. A massive python, as thick as Orion's torso, lay coiled in the sun, a beautiful but terrifying mosaic of scales and patterns. It was the largest one I had ever seen. Orion let out a powerful, deep roar, a sound that shook the very ground. It wasn't an aggressive roar, it was a territorial one, a warning. The python lifted its head, its black eyes unblinking. It didn't seem to care. It was too big, too confident in its own power. My father roared again, and this time he picked up a large, heavy stone. He didn't throw it. He just held it in his hand, a silent but clear threat. The python, seeing that we weren't just a pack of easy prey but a group with a fierce protector, slowly began to uncoil, its massive body sliding away into the grass. The whole encounter was over in a heartbeat, but it left a lasting impression. It wasn't just my father's roar that had saved us. It was the intelligence behind it, the use of a tool, and the clear message that we were not to be messed with. The days continued like this, a mix of new challenges and new triumphs. We learned to find new foods, digging for roots with sharpened sticks and foraging for the hardy berries that grew on thorny bushes. We learned to build simple shelters from large branches to protect us from the sudden, powerful storms that would sweep across the plains. The world was changing us. We were no longer just tree dwellers. We were becoming something new, something that belonged to the ground and the sky. The old ape had shown us the end of a long, tired road. The agile ape in the canopy had shown us a different path. And my father, Orion, with his quiet strength and his thoughtful eyes, was leading us down a third path, a path where we were learning to be smart, to be resourceful, and to walk tall in a world that was demanding we stand up. I often thought about the old ways, the sweet, easy life in the deep forest. But I knew we couldn't go back. The sun was hotter, the air was drier, and the world was getting harder. The changing earth was forcing us to change with it. And in a strange way, it felt exciting. The endless plains, once a source of anxiety, were becoming our new home. The dry earth, which had felt so hard and unforgiving, now held secrets we were learning to unlock. My father, Orion, had always been a master of his environment. But now, he was becoming a master of a different kind of knowledge. He was not just reacting to the world, he was shaping it. One sun-scorched afternoon, we came across a pile of bones, bleached white by the sun. They were the remains of a large antelope, a creature we sometimes saw from a distance. The meat was long gone, but the bones were not useless. Orion, his eyes thoughtful, picked up a large bone, heavy and thick. He then found a smooth, hard stone, one of the many that littered the plains. He sat down, and with a concentration that was intense and quiet, he began to use the stone to chip away at the bone. The sound was sharp and rhythmic, a new song on the plains. Chips of bone flew into the air. I sat beside him, fascinated. I had seen him use a stone to crack a nut, but this was different. He wasn't just using the rock as a tool, he was using it to make another tool. The end of the bone began to take a new shape, becoming sharper, pointier. He was creating a spear. He worked for a long time, his strong hands moving with a delicate precision. My mother, Ilara, watched him, a quiet pride in her eyes. She knew, as I did, that this was a pivotal moment. The spear wasn't just a weapon, it was an idea. It was a symbol of our growing intelligence, our ability to think ahead and to manipulate our world in a way no other creature could. My mother, not to be outdone, had a different kind of genius. She saw the tough, fibrous reeds that grew near, the few remaining water sources. With her strong hands, she would pull them from the ground, and with her nimble fingers, she would begin to twist and braid them. She was making a basket, a container to carry the berries and nuts we were finding. Before, we had to eat what we found where we found it. Now, with her basket, we could gather food and bring it back to a safe place. It was a new kind of freedom, a new kind of planning. It meant we didn't have to spend all our time foraging, and we could have food even on days when we were in an area without much to eat. My little sister Lyra was learning too, though in her own small way. She would mimic my mother, trying to twist the reeds with her tiny fingers. Her attempts were clumsy, but they were the beginning of a skill that would one day be as important as her ability to climb or walk. The sun began to set, turning the sky a brilliant star-speckled purple. Orion finished his work, and the spear was ready. It was not a perfect tool, but it was ours. He held it up, and in the fading light, the tip gleamed like a newly born star. It was a light in the growing darkness of our changing world. That night, as we slept on a ledge overlooking the plains, I thought about the stone and the star. The stone was the past, the hard, unforgiving earth that had forced us to change. But the star was the future, a brilliant idea that we had crafted with our own hands. It was the knowledge that we were not just passengers in this world, but creators. We were learning to write our own story, not just to live in one that was already written. I looked up at the real stars, 1,000 pinpricks of light in the vast, dark sky. I wondered if they saw us, this small family of apes, walking tall and making tools. I wondered if they knew that down here, on a small patch of changing earth, a new kind of life was beginning. A life that was harder, yes, but also a life that was filled with a new kind of hope, a hope forged from a stone and a star. We were no longer just Ouranopithecus. We were becoming something more. We were becoming human. The spear, born from a bone and a stone, was a silent promise of a new future. It lay beside my father, Orion, as we slept, a dark silhouette against the moonlight. But a promise is just a promise until it is kept. The next morning, Orion didn't lead us to the familiar berry bushes or the sun-baked patches of wild dates. He led us to the edge of a wide, open clearing, the same one where we had faced the giant python. The sun was just climbing into the sky, and the air was cool and crisp. A herd of antelopes, their bodies lean and graceful, grazed peacefully in the distance. Their ears flicked, their tails swished, but they were unaware of us. A small group of creatures hidden in the brush. We were hunters now, but not in the way a leopard or a lion was. They relied on speed and surprise. We relied on a plan. Orion's eyes were fixed on the herd, a new kind of intensity in them. He held the spear in his hand, its sharp tip glinting. He made a series of low, soft grunts, a language of signals that my mother, Ilara, and the other adults understood. It was a strategy. Some of the younger males, light on their feet, would circle around the herd, staying downwind so their scent wouldn't give them away. They were to be the drivers, the ones who would herd the antelopes towards a narrow gully where the rest of us waited. My mother and I, along with the other females and young, were to wait in the gully. We weren't just waiting. We were part of the plan. My mother carried her woven basket, which was no longer just for berries. It was for carrying meat. I, along with the other young, were to be quiet, to be still, to be invisible. We were learning the patience of the hunter, the silent art of waiting. The sun climbed higher and the air grew warmer. The wait was long. 1,000 buzzing insects flew around my head, and I had to fight the urge to swat them away. My body ached from staying still for so long. But I knew the importance of our silence. Our very survival depended on it. Then a sudden burst of sound. The young males had done their job. They let out loud, sharp cries, and the antelopes, startled, began to run. They didn't run towards the open plains, where they would be safe. They ran towards the gully, towards us. Their hooves pounded the earth, a sound like a drumbeat. Their beautiful, frightened eyes were wide with panic. Orion stood at the mouth of the gully, a silent, powerful guardian. He was no longer just a father or a leader. He was a predator, a different kind of predator. As the first of the antelopes, a young, clumsy one, stumbled into the gully, Orion's spear flew. It wasn't a powerful throw, not like a lion's pounce. It was a precise, calculated thrust, a testament to his intelligence and his new skill. The hunt was successful. The kill was not easy or without a struggle, but it was swift. We gathered around the fallen antelope, not with the usual animalistic frenzy, but with a different kind of purpose. My mother used a sharpened stone to cut away the hide and the tough meat. The younger males helped carry the heavy pieces. We didn't eat it all at once, gorging ourselves until we were sick. We planned for the future. We put some of the meat in my mother's basket to be carried back to a safe place for another day. As the sun began its long descent, we feasted. The meat was rich and nourishing, a different kind of food from the fruits and berries we were used to. It filled us with a new kind of energy, a new kind of strength. It was a victory, not just of a hunt, but of an idea. The spear, the basket, the plan, they were all a part of a new story we were writing, a story of intelligence and a cooperation. That night, as I lay beside my mother, my belly full, I thought about the antelope. It was a beautiful creature, and I felt a pang of sadness. But the sadness was mixed with a powerful feeling of gratitude and a new kind of respect. We were no longer just scavengers, living off the scraps of others. We were hunters, a new kind of force in the world. We were standing tall, walking on 2 feet, and our minds were becoming as powerful as our bodies. The world was changing us, yes, but we were also changing the world. And in that change, a new kind of life was being born. The successful hunt had done more than just fill our bellies. It had changed the very fabric of our family. We were no longer a small, quiet group just surviving. We were a community, working together with a shared purpose. The spear, the basket, the strategic hunting, all of these things were connecting us in a new way, forging bonds that were stronger than simple kinship. That evening, we gathered around a small fire. Not a roaring bonfire, but a carefully controlled blaze that my father, Orion, had coaxed from dry twigs and grasses. The smoke kept the buzzing insects at bay, and the warm glow pushed back the shadows of the night. It was a new kind of comfort, a new kind of safety. Around the fire, the stories began. My mother, Alara, used her hands to tell the story of the hunt. She mimicked the graceful movements of the antelope, the stealth of the young males, and the swift, purposeful thrust of my father's spear. Her face, lit by the flickering firelight, was animated and expressive. She wasn't just describing the hunt, she was reliving it, and we were all a part of it. Then, a new kind of story emerged. An old female who had been a quiet presence in our group began to tell a different kind of tale. Her name was Mara, and her face was a roadmap of a long life, with wrinkles around her eyes and a quiet wisdom in her gaze. She used her hands to describe the ancient forest, the one before the land had changed. She showed us the giant trees, so big that they could hold a whole family. She spoke of the easy food, of a time when you didn't have to walk on two legs or hunt with a spear to find a meal. Her story wasn't just a memory. It was a lesson. It taught us where we came from, what our ancestors had known. It gave us a sense of history, a feeling that we were a part of something much bigger than just our small family. It made me understand the look of quiet sadness in the lonely old male's eyes. He wasn't just old and alone. He was a relic of a time that was gone forever. My father, Orion, watched Mara, a thoughtful expression on his face. He knew the old forest, too, but his gaze was always forward, towards the future. He didn't just listen to the stories. He added to them. He told us about the sky, about the way the stars moved across the night. He pointed to a bright, steady light, a star that stayed in one place, and told us that as long as we could see it, we would know which way was north, which way was home. It was a new kind of map, a new kind of compass, a way of finding our place in a world that was always changing. As the fire burned down to embers, I lay wrapped in the warmth of my mother's fur, listening to the quiet sounds of the night. The stories, the new skills, the fire, they were all a part of a single thread that was weaving us together. The world outside the circle of firelight was big and scary and full of a million unknowns. But inside, we were safe. We were together. We were a family not just by blood, but by stories, by memories, by a shared purpose. I felt a new kind of connection to my father and mother, to Mara, to the young males, to everyone in our group. We were all a part of a great narrative, a tale that began with the changing earth and was now being written by our own hands. We were not just Ouranopithecus, a species of ancient ape. We were becoming something more, something that could think, plan, and, most importantly, tell stories. We were becoming human. And that night, under the watchful gaze of the stars, our story, our family, and our future felt as bright and as full of possibility as the fire that warmed our faces. The days that followed were a testament to our new way of life. We were not just surviving, we were thriving. The spear had made us more efficient hunters, and the basket had made us more resourceful gatherers. The fire had given us a center, a place to share food, warmth, and, most importantly, stories. Our world was no longer just a place we moved through. It was a place we were shaping. My father, Orion, was more than just a leader now. He was a teacher. He taught me how to find the best stones for tools, the ones that would break with a sharp, clean edge. He showed me how to make a spear that was balanced, one that would fly true. He taught me to watch the clouds for the signs of a coming storm, and to read the tracks of animals in the hard, dry earth. My mother, Ilara, taught me the healing properties of certain leaves and the best way to weave a strong, tight basket. She showed me how to tell which berries were sweet and which were sour just by looking at their color and texture. Her knowledge was as vital to our survival as my father's strength and skill. And I, Kyle, was no longer just a boy. I was a part of it all. I was a student, a helper, a future leader in the making. I could walk on two legs without wobbling, and my hands, once clumsy, were now getting the feel for a tool. I was a child of the plains and the trees, a part of a new kind of family, a new kind of species. One evening, as the sun was setting, and the sky was a canvas of impossible colors, Orion led me to a high ridge overlooking the vast expanse of the plains. We stood together side by side, our silhouettes a mirror image of each other. He was big and strong, and I was small and still growing, but we were both standing tall. We were both looking out at the same world. The wind, which had once felt like a whisper of fear and uncertainty, now felt like a familiar friend. It carried the scent of the dry grass and the distant promise of water. It was a wind of change, a wind of our story. Orion put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture I now knew was more than just a touch. It was a connection, a message. He pointed. to the horizon, to where the last light of the sun was fading. He didn't say a word, but I understood. The world was changing, and we had to change with it. The old world of endless forests was gone, but this new world of endless horizons was just beginning. It was a world that we were ready for. That night, as the stars filled the sky, I knew our story wasn't over. It was just a beginning. We were Ouranopithecus, but we were so much more. We were a family, a community, a species of thinkers and builders. We were the children of the changing earth, and we were walking tall into the future, ready for whatever lay beyond the endless horizon. Our journey was far from over. It had just truly begun.